Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. Today, we are going to start a new chapter that is judiciary. Under this chapter, we will discuss everything about judiciary. Uh, what do we mean by what is the main function of judiciary? In commonly, it is understood that judiciary is only to settle the disputes, but actually judiciary plays a very important constitutional and political role also. And this chapter will discuss the role of judiciary as protector of fundamental right, which we have discussed earlier also when we were discussing the chapter fundamental rights. And we will also see how judiciary plays the role of the interpreter of the constitution. And in this way, uh, our understanding of judiciary is really going to increase by the discussions of this chapter. So first of all, we will understand what is the meaning of independence of judiciary and why do we need an independent judiciary? First of all, we will try to understand the meaning of independence of judiciary. It means that the judiciary, there are three organs of the government. These things should always in your mind. There are three organs of the government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The legislature, the function of the legislature is to make laws, the executive implement these laws, and the judiciary, uh, we say that if somebody is not obeying the law, then it punishes the person. But in here we will discuss about the functions of judiciary, which is very wide ranging. But that will be discussed later. Here we must understand what do we mean by independence of judiciary. It means that the other organs of the government like executive and legislature, they should not interfere in any way in the functioning of the judiciary. The main function of the judiciary is to do justice, and the this function of judiciary should not be uh, obstructed because of interference of judiciary and because of interference of executive and legislature. This is independence of judiciary. Then whatever decision judiciary is going to take, that should not be interfered with by the executive and legislature. Judges must have that much of independence. They must function without any fear or favor. If our judges are performing their function with fear in their mind or with any kind of favor, then judiciary will not remain independent. So, in order to make our judiciary independent, it is very much important that the judges must be free of fear or favor. So, this is the meaning of judiciary independence, independence of judiciary. So, but here one more thing is there which must be clear, that independence of judiciary means that judiciary is free, but it does not mean that judiciary is unaccountable. It does not mean that it can do anything. It can use its powers in an arbitrary manner. No, it's not like that. Independence of judiciary means that the judiciary is free in delivering justice to the people, and it is it is accountable. It is accountable towards the people of the country, it is accountable towards the constitution of the country. So, independence of judiciary does not mean that independence of judiciary does not mean that the judiciary is unaccountable. It is unaccountable. It is accountable. It is accountable towards the constitution of the country, and constitution is made by the representatives of the people. So the ultimate sovereignty in India lies with the people. So the judiciary is also accountable towards the people. So it is very much important if we want our government to be democratic, the judiciary has a very important role to play. Without the contribution of judiciary, democracy cannot be established in real sense of the term. If we really want that our country should be governed by democratic practices, our country must have a democratic government, then judiciary is needed to be completely independent. Our judges needed to deliver decisions, deliver judgment in a free and fair manner. There must not be any kind of fear or favor in their mind. So all these things account for uh, independence of judiciary. In this regard, we can say that judiciary is the uh, salt in the food. Uh, you know, there is no substitution of salt. नमक एक ऐसी चीज है जिसका कि कोई सब्स्टिट्यूशन नहीं होता है, और अगर खाने में नमक ना हो तो वो खाना क्या होता है, दैट इज कम्प्लीटली टेस्टलेस, और हम खा ही नहीं सकेंगे, वी विल नॉट बी एबल टू ईट द फूड. सो ये जो खाने में जो नमक का रोल होता है, द सेम रोल इज बीइंग प्लेड बाय द जुडिशियरी इन अ डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नमेंट. जुडिशियरी जो है वो सॉल्ट है जिसका कोई सब्स्टिट्यूट नहीं है, और जिसके बिना डेमोक्रेसी कैन नॉट बी एस्टैब्लिश्ड इन रियल सेंस ऑफ द टर्म. इसलिए हमें जुडिशियरी को इंडिपेंडेंट रखना बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट होता है. If the judiciary turns to be committed or controlled, then the whole system will turn undemocratic. So, this is the independence of judiciary, and in order to achieve this independence of judiciary, so many provisions has been made by our constitution makers. For example, our constitution makers has made provision for the appointment of the judges by the president, and the legislature has no role to play in the process of the appointment of the judges, because uh, the process of appointment of judges should be free from the party politics, and this is the reason that our constitution makers has not given any role to legislature to play in the appointment of the judges. And it is important, if a person is appointed as a judge, then that person must have experience as a lawyer, and uh, or he must be well knowledge he must have well knowledge in law. Either he may be a lawyer, he must be a lawyer, or he must have good knowledge of law, or both the things. So politics has nothing to do with his appointment, and the person to be appointed as judge, his political opinion, his political loyalty is not at all a criteria for the appointment as a judge. So, our constitution makers has made every effort to keep the appointment of the judges free from the influence of the party politics. Now we see that the judges have a fixed tenure. They and within they have a retirement age, and before that retirement age they cannot be removed. There are some exceptional cases only in which they can be removed, but in normal times they cannot be removed with before reaching the age of retirement. So, in a way, the constitution has provided them security of tenure, because the process of removal of judges are very difficult. Is very difficult process, and it is not easy for any parliament to pass this process of removal in an easy manner. So it's a very difficult process, and this difficult process has been adopted by the constitution makers deliberately, so that the tenure of so that the judges must be secure about their tenure. They should not be in fear that they can be removed from their post, and they must work according to the interest of the ruling party or the majority party in the legislature. So, in order to um, make the mind of the judges free of fear, our constitution has made this provision. Now, we see that the judiciary is also financially independent. What do we mean by financially independent? It means that it is not financially dependent on the executive or the legislature. Whatever salary or allowances the judges are um, the judges are entitled to get, these salaries and allowances are not need to be uh, these salaries and allowances not subject to the approval of the legislature. We have discussed in the chapter when we were reading functions of legislature that one of the important function of the parliament is to grant is to approve the grants which were made by the government. So, in this regard, we see when the salaries and allowances of the judges of the courts are not needed to get approval of the legislature. Okay, the actions and decisions of the judges are immune from personal criticism. It means that whatever decision has been taken by the judges, these on the basis of these decisions, no one can personally criticize a judge. And if someone does that, then what will happen? Then he will be the guilty of contempt of court, and he can be penalized. So, why these provisions has been made in the constitution? Because our constitution makers wanted the judges to be independent. There is no need to get approval of the salaries and allowances of the legislature. No one can criticize personally criticize the action and decisions of the judges, and there is the provision of contempt of court also. Anyone can be punished on the ground of contempt of court if he is found guilty of this. So these are the methods through which, these are the uh, arrangements through which the judiciary has been made independent. Then it is not the parliament cannot discuss any conduct of the judges in the parliament, in the house. Only during the process of removal of judge is going on, then only the parliament can discuss the conduct of the judges. Otherwise, the parliament cannot discuss the conduct of any of the judges. So, in this way we see that the constitution makers has tried to make our judiciary independent, because if there is a right to discuss the conduct of the judges in the parliament, then the judges will be in a fear, because they will think that if they take any decision, if they deliver any judgment, then there may be criticism of their in the parliament, so it will cause a kind of fear in their mind. So our constitution makers has made this provision that any conduct of judges cannot be discussed in the House. Only when the process of removal of the judges is going on, then only the Parliament can discuss the conduct of the judges. Otherwise, it cannot. Now we will come to this question: ki why? Why do we need an independent judiciary? What is the need of an independent judiciary? So, first of all, we must know the function a judiciary do. The most important function of the judiciary is to settle disputes. Disputes may arise between individuals, it may arise between groups, or between individual and groups, or between individual and government also. So, these disputes need to be settled by the judiciary, and this judiciary must be an independent body, because we are seeing that when we are saying that the judiciary settle the disputes, so this dispute can arise between individual or groups and government. So now you think, if an individual and the central government, there is dispute between an individual and the central government, and if our judiciary is not independent, then what will happen? Then in that case, the individual will never be able to get justice, because the because the judiciary will always deliver judgment in favor of government. So it is very much required that the judiciary must be independent. And the idea of the judiciary is based on the idea of rule of law. And now we must know, what do we mean by rule of law? Rule of law, as the name suggests, the who is ruling. There is not a person or a group of people are ruling the country. The country is ruled by law. Law is the supreme. सबसे ऊपर कौन है? Law है. All the post, everyone is under the rule of law. Okay. Any person, he may be rich or poor, man or woman, forward or backward caste, even a prime minister or a peon, all are subject to the same law. Law is same for everyone. Everyone is equal in the eyes of law, and law is the supreme. Okay, so this is rule of law, and the principal role of the judiciary is to protect rule of law. Who maintains, who इस रूल ऑफ लॉ को कौन एग्जीक्यूट करता है? हु इज गोइंग टू एग्जीक्यूट दिस रूल ऑफ लॉ? It is executed by the judiciary. It is the judiciary who ensure supremacy of law. So in this way, we can see the important role uh, which is played by the judiciary. If the judiciary is not able to work independently, then the rule of law cannot be established in a real and meaningful manner. So, if we really want to establish rule of law, if we really want to establish democracy, then there is very much need of an independent judiciary, because an independent judiciary can only safeguard the rights of individual, settle disputes according to the law of the land. If there is dispute between an individual and the central government, then that dispute will not be settled according to the status of the people. It will be settled according to the law, and in this way, this independence of judiciary is very much required. It ensures that democracy does not give way to individual or group dictatorship. It is the judiciary which is establishing the rule of law, which is establishing the supremacy of law. And in this way, it is ensuring that there is not the rule of any individual or a group of individual. So, in this way, the judiciary plays the role of controlling the executive. The executive cannot become dictator if we have an independent judiciary. So, in order to be able to do all this, it is necessary that the judiciary is independent of any political pressure. If the judiciary has to work in pressure, if the judiciary has to work in political pressure, then it cannot function, it cannot perform its functions independently. And in this way, the rule of law, the supremacy of law, and ultimately the democratic uh, practices of the country will be obstructed, and the country will move towards the establishment of dictatorship. So, this is the requirement of an independent judiciary. So, we have discussed what do we mean by independence of judiciary, and what is the need of independence of judiciary. Now, we will discuss appointment of judges. What are the provisions in the constitution regarding the appointment of the judges? So, appointment of judges is has remained controversial. Many times, political controversy arose regarding the appointment of the judges, and we see that whoever is appointed as the Chief Justice of India or other Chief Justice of other high courts, they are in a very powerful position, because they are given the role of interpreter of the constitution. They are given the role of protector of the fundamental rights. So in this regard, what is very much important, that the appointment of the judges should be done in such a way that their impartiality should not be affected, their independence should not be affected. So, our constitution has not made it clear regarding the appointment of the Chief Justice of India. It was only it is only there that the president should appoint the Chief Justice of India. But many times, many controversy arose, um, and slowly what happened, a convention developed in our country. Convention means it's not a written प्रोविजन ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, बस ये ऐसा हमारे यहाँ प्रैक्टिस अडॉप्ट कर लिया गया. ओके, इट इज जस्ट अ प्रैक्टिस हैज बीन अडॉप्टेड दैट द सीनियर मोस्ट जज of the Supreme Court was appointed as Chief Justice of India. So you don't have to look into any other criteria. Only the senior most judge of the Supreme Court uh, will be appointed as Chief Justice of India. Uh, this became a convention in India. But as this is a this was a convention, it was not written anywhere. It was not a written rule, or it was not a written provision of the constitution that the senior most judge of Supreme Court should only become the Chief Justice of India. So what happened is that two times such situation arose when this convention was broken. First time in 1973, when A.N. Ray was appointed as Chief Justice of India, superseding three senior judges. There were three senior judges, and A.N. Ray was at the fourth rank. He was fourth senior judge. But what happened in 1973, that the three senior judges were superseded, and the fourth senior most judge was made the CJI of India. This was the against the convention. Then again in 1975, we find that Justice M.H. Beg was appointed, superseding Justice H.R. Khanna. So these appointments are influenced by politics. Why three judges were being superseded um, by the Council of Minister, when the Council of Minister gave advice to the President for the appointment of CJI in 1973, it superseded three senior most judges. It ignored three senior most judges, and the fourth senior most judges, that was A.N. Ray, he was made the CJI. Why it was done? The reason behind this was the Keswan and Bharti, the verdict of the Keswan and Bharti case. You must be remembering. I told you during the discussions of on the under the chapter fundamental rights, we have discussed the matter how uh, right to property became a bone of contention between the parliament and the executive on the one hand, and judiciary on the other hand. And in this controversy, the executive and the parliament were of the opinion that directive principles are more important than fundamental rights. And in order to implement any of the directive principles of the state policy, the parliament has the right to parliament has the right to abridge this fundamental rights of people. And on the basis of this argument, Zamindari Abolition Act was to bring. But the judiciary was of the opinion that the fundamental rights can never be can never should not be affected by the act by the amendments of the amendments which was done by the parliament. So in this controversy, we know that the verdict of the Keshwanand Bharati case was very important. In this case, the judiciary uh, delivered the uh, delivered the judgment that the parliament can amend all the parts of the constitution, but it cannot amend the basic structure of the constitution. So, what happened? The judgment was against the executive. The judgment was against the, we can say, it was against the against the authority of the parliament, against the powers of the parliament. So what happened that when the appointment of CGI was to be done, the government, the executive has ignored these three judges, these three senior most judges. These were the judges who delivered the judgment in case one and Bharti case, and that is the reason that these three judges were superseded by A.N. Ray. So we can see how politics was affecting the appointment of the Chief Justice of India. So it's a type of lack of independence. In this example, we are seeing that the judiciary is not free. We cannot say that judiciary is independent because the appointment of the CJI was done on the basis of politics. Party politics was there. Party politics was playing a vital role in the appointment of the CJI. So this condition was later improved because what happened that we will see this the other judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court are appointed by President after consulting the CJI. So CJI is getting appointed by the President on the advice of Council of Ministers, and then other judges other than CJI. So other judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court are appointed by the President after consulting the CJI. चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया से कंसल्ट करने के बाद सुप्रीम कोर्ट और हाई कोर्ट के जजेस को ये किया जाता है, अपॉइंट किया जाता है. अब this in effect meant that the final decision in matters of appointment rested with the Council of Ministers. So, what then was the status of consultation with the Chief Justice? Our Constitution is ambiguous regarding this matter. On the one hand, they are saying that the President will whatever is done by the President, it will be done with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Okay, President does not do anything on his own. It works according to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. And on the other hand, it is saying that the other judges of the Supreme Court and High Court are appointed by the President after consulting the CJI. So, Prime Minister President will be accepting whose advice? Advice of Council of Ministers or advice of CJI? So there was ambiguity in our constitution. It was not clear in the constitution what does it want to say. So this matter came up in the Supreme Court. Many times the matter went in the Supreme Court between 1982 and 1998. Okay, and in this regard, we will discuss other matters. Very important matters are these. We will discuss it in the next class.